Okay, so good evening and welcome everybody. I'm Councillor Sayal Raza, Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It's now 7 p.m. and I would like to welcome everyone to this meeting of the committee. My fellow scrutineers, members and officers of the council and the members of public, whether present with us in Hounslow House or watching on the committee on the council's YouTube channel. Today is the final meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee this municipal year. That means the agenda sees us look forward and back reviewing progress on previous recommendations, as well as make suggestions for 2024-25. We also have agenda items that are very much off the here and now. We'll begin with an update on our Scrutiny in a Day session, which took place across the borough today. Keeping with the housing theme, when we received a report considering the impact of Social Housing Act. We'll also have a report on community safety with a particular focus on antisocial behaviour, male domestic violence and homophobic attacks. In addition, we have several shorter items on the agenda and they are progress against the Council's delivery plan, a look back on how the last year's recommendations from two of our scrutiny panels, the Children and Young People Scrutiny Panel and the Health and Adult Care Scrutiny Panel, have been taken on by the Council. Updates from the chairs of this year's scrutiny panels as they set out the detailed findings and recommendations from their deep dives. A further update from Councillor Sharma and the Council representatives on North West London Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. An opportunity to comment on the draft annual scrutiny report and our suggestions for next year's work programme. And as we head towards the end of this municipal year, an urgent business should there be any. Those watching remotely may also have noticed a change to our committee membership. I would like to take this moment to welcome Councillor Gabriella Giles to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and look forward to hearing her contributions at this and the last OSC of this municipal year. Of course, Councillor Giles has also participated this morning in the scrutiny today as well. So thank you for that. For the benefit of our guests and for Councillor Giles, I'll take a few moments to set out how the meeting will work. As chair, I'll run the meeting and invite people to speak. I hope we can combine questions and observations, as we have done much of this municipal year, to allow for a more fluid discussion. I shall invite our guests to introduce their reports. I will then invite members of the committee to ask questions of our guests. I, or Councillor Foot, my Vice Chair, shall then speak last and then briefly sum up the discussion and advise of any issues or common ground to note. Every member of the committee who wishes to speak will have the opportunity to speak. Please be mindful of your fellow committee members and our guests and ensure your contributions are pertinent and help us frame a meaningful recommendation. Having set out the way in which I will chair the meeting, shall we begin? So agenda item number 1, apologies for absence, declaration of interest and other communications from members. I have received one apology from Councillor Butt. Is there any? Others? No, thank you. Any declarations of interest? No, thank you. And any other communications from members? Brilliant, thank you very much. Okay, so moving on to agenda item number 2. So this is the committee to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of February 2023. It's quite a long time ago. We have before us the minutes of the 15th of February committee meeting. Do members have an issue of accuracy to raise on a particular set of minutes? If so, then can we please now just agree the minutes? All agree? Thank you. That's agreed. Moving on to agenda item number 3, scrutiny in a day. Throughout my tenure as chair, I know the committee has been keen to demonstrate the impact and try new ways of considering scrutiny. Today, we spent time in Feltham and Hanworth running a scrutiny in a day session. This was a chance to scope, scrutinise and develop recommendations across a single day. Something new for Hounslow, an approach that is rather novel for scrutiny nationally. We begin by discussing the challenges we as councillors hear from local residents when it comes to housing associations, repairs, communications, antisocial behaviour, and more. Besides, crucially, we had housing associations in the room with us, and the whole process felt much more of a conversation than a cross-examination. We didn't duck issues, and I was pleased to hear that housing associations welcomed the space to consider these issues. We then heard from local residents in Chiswick and Feltham, as well as visiting Paris House in Feltham and Butts Farm in Hanworth. Good scrutiny needs to consider place of our work today, come back again and again to how we can best work for local people rather than simply act in organisation silos. There are those who say it's a risk to try something new. I suggest the bigger the risk, why not try a different approach? I'd like to thank everyone for their contributions, member of the committee, our guests from 80 Dominion, Metropolitan, Thames Valley, Peabody, Places for People, and Richmond Housing Partnership, and crucially, local residents in Chiswick, Feltham, and Hanworth for their perspectives. Of course, what matters is not just the conversation, but also what we recommend as a committee. To that end, we developed 3 overarching recommendations, which I'll look to the committee to agree tonight. So one of those are better communication amongst housing professionals. Number 2, better communications with local people. Number 3, greater focus on place. These are big, meaty items, and there is a lot to break down into that. Before we actually get into the nitty-gritty, do I have a seconder for these recommendations? Do we agree on these recommendations that we had this morning? Thank you. That is all gone. Thank you. In that case, I'll write to the Housing Association partners later this week, thanking them for their time in formally recording our recommendations. I would also like to thank Lucy for her suggesting scrutiny in a day. She's done absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much. Okay, so we move on to agenda item number 8. We're going to just skip number 4 for now, only by request of Cabinet Member. So we're going to move on to agenda item number 8, which is agenda, I will get it in a moment, a response to Health and Adults Care Scrutiny Panel recommendations. We now turn to assessing the impact of recommendations from Health and Adult Care Scrutiny Panels 2022-23, chaired by Councillor Sharma. The panel looked at how dementia care in the community. We are joined this evening by Councillor Samia Chowdhury, Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care, Public Health and Transformation, and again by Steve Forbes, Executive Director of Children's and Adult Services. We are asked to note the progress made against deep dives recommendations. Councillor Chowdhury, is there anything you would like to say before I open up the discussion?
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you, first of all, for bringing it forward. Really appreciate it. Just this report is just for noting responses to health and adult care scrutiny panel recommendations for number 2022. I hope everyone has seen the report and read the report. We've got the progress made to date and the further actions on page 135 to 136. And I'm really glad to say, I'm sure everyone knows that from 13th to 19th of May is a Dementia Action Week. I missed you, Councillor Sharma, today. You couldn't make it because you were at the scrutiny today. It was a really successful event. It's just to kind of showcase that we have been doing really great work the whole last year with our memory cafes And today, I think we had about 200 people who were registered to attend the event, but 30 just turned up, and that's excluding the carers. And talking to people, listening to them, and seeing how well we are doing with all our organizations was a great day today. And Hounslow House will be turning their lights blue today, because as we are committed to be dementia friendly borough. So any question from anyone, I'm happy to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Committee members. Councillor Sharma.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to say that a lot of thought and effort was obviously put in by myself and my panel members as well, and that I'm really happy that we are a dementia-friendly borough and that the recommendations were approved, and we're doing so much to help and support our residents and family members with dementia. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Councillor Giles.
Yeah, thank you very much for the report. I see that there's a lot of options and decisions to be considered, and I'm just wondering, are there any metrics that go alongside this other than looking at progress made and actions to be made? Because obviously it's nice to have an idea of what percentage has been completed or that we're still looking to achieve.
So in response to Councillor to the metrics, one of the key metrics here is the diagnostic rate, and I have to confess off the top of my head, I cannot actually remember what the national diagnostic rate target is. I think it's something like 63%, which we achieve, and that's based on the potential perceived proportion of people with dementia within any population. So we are at above now. We were behind on diagnostic rates. We are now with NHS partners at or above, and it fluctuates depending on population number of people seen. So we've achieved that diagnostic. There are other diagnostic performance figures that relate to some of the activities here. So there's the mention of end of life care. There isn't a national target there, but we are a specific outlier in Hounslow in terms of the number of people who can elect to die at home and subsequently can die at home. So that's one of the areas within you see a mention here of the Frailty Programme Board, which I am the joint senior responsible officer with Anne Stratton from HRCH. So it's one of the work streams within that programme in terms of trying to improve end-of-life care. We are at the moment having to work through, because there is no new national investment for end-of-life care. There was at some time ago, additional monies came into the NHS, there aren't anymore. So our improvement in that performance target is based on having to redesign the end-of-life pathway. And there is a group that sits inside the programme that is looking at that, because we do need to step up the number of people who are successfully dying at home. If I use that word appropriately but inappropriate, we are not doing well locally and we need to get better, and happy to share. We have a data set for that, more than happy to share that with Scrutiny Committee outside the meeting.
Thank you. Any other sort of questions? No. Okay. Look. So, firstly, just thank you so much for the team that do an exceptional job when it comes to adult health, especially dementia as well. So, brilliant that we've got the cafes open. You know, it's really good progress that's going there as well, and it's just building up that image that we are doing something about it, and we're only going to do better in the future. So well done to you and your team. That's great. And of course, do please use the Scrutiny deep dives if we do need to look at any sort of area going forward. But thank you so much for the work there.
Thank you very much. I must say the team has been working extremely hard, and I'm really, really glad and very happy the way they work. It's not easy. Adult social care is not easy. But then thinking about it, deep diving onto one thing like we did in dementia, it's just like for myself attending an event for a couple of hours and speaking to carers and people it's something where I feel it's not easy, but hats off to our team who does an amazing work and all our partners within that who are working with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Okay, so we now move back to agenda item number 4. So a bit of a breather there, but here we go. Impact of Social Housing Act. So when we met in the summer of 2023, the scope of our work program, the Social Housing White Paper, struck us as an important issue to consider. Fast forward 10 months, the White Paper is now legislation. It fundamentally alters the landscape of social housing, the expectations on social landlords, and the rights of tenants. The Act allows the regulator of the social housing to take action against social landlords before people are at risk and hold landlords to account. With regular inspections, it introduces new social housing consumer standards and gives the Secretary of State power to require social landlords to investigate and rectify serious health hazards. The council is a social landlord with over 13,000 tenants. So this is an issue both for LBH and for other social landlords who own properties in the borough. Against the backdrop, we are asked to note the impact of Social Housing Regulation Act 2023 in introducing a new regulation and inspection regime for all social landlords. Note, in particular, the regulation of social housing's interest in member scrutiny of the council's landlord function, its governance and interactions with tenants, and consider and provide suggestions on the committee's participation in a new regime and any recommendations it may wish to give in relation to this or any other aspect of this report. We are joined this evening by Councillor Sue Sampson, Cabinet Member of Housing Management and Homelessness, and Modesta Uncha, Director of Housing, and Ben Tomlinson, Head of Housing, Planning and Resources. Welcome to you all. Councillor Sampson, may I ask you to introduce your report? You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. 10 months ago. God, we have done a lot of work in 10 months. But anyway, thank you for inviting us back. So really, it's the update. It's required, as I assume that everyone's had the chance to read the report and everything. Have we got the presentation on the screen, Chair? No. Oh, okay, no.
Sorry, so all the committee members do have it in their packs.
Right, okay, thank you. Okay. So I would just wish to speak to the presentation to briefly go over the key implications. In addition to so I'm on this page number, there isn't one, but that one. In addition to the consumer standards, there are 13 separate consultations around having some have been concluded and some are still ongoing. Okay. We have 5 different strands of that assessment, and which are leading on, which is the neighbourhood and community, safety and quality, tenancy, transparency and influence, and accountability, and tenant satisfaction measurements. Okay, so in addition, there are also the complaints handling code, which is on the other page, the purple page. But yeah, that you can see the extent of the work that's taken place. As you go further into the report, you will see a survey was carried out by ourselves at Christmas time, that's highlighted our strengths and weaknesses. So we know ourselves where we are, and we know what needs to be done. The main issues that we've picked up, I think, doesn't really. We sort of know where we are, which is the repairs and complaints. But we now have a more robust measurement KPIs in place for Lambton, which is currently being monitored, so very tightly. Yeah, so we know where we are. If there's any questions on that report, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you, Councillor Sampson. Now we move to points of clarification. So back to the committee members. So of course you've just heard the report. You read the report. Is there any sort of points of clarification that you would address to Councillor Sampson? Any committee member? Councillor Murray.
Yeah. Chair, yeah. Right, I'd like to ask a question, please, from the Housing Department. Safety and quality perspective, how are the repairs progress? What are the KPIs? And are they trending in the right directions?
Health and safety aspects of the council, of the compliance area, is we have no concerns. The area of concerns we have are the reactive day-to-day. So that does not include compliance, because compliance and that area is separated. So is that what you're looking for?
I just need to know the KPIs are on repair, especially because I keep doing the caseworks for the same houses 3-4 times.
Right, so you're talking about day-to-day repairs, right? So you're not talking about health and safety, which is the compliance. Okay, we know that they are at 76? Hold on, sorry, hold on. 71%, which is not where we want it to be, and neither is where it should be. And we have put in, like as I said, we've put in an action plan, a new agreement, in order to manage that and bring that to where it needs to be. And that is being monitored robustly.
Councillor Cameron, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question in terms of tenant satisfaction. What is the measurement criteria? What is the measurement criteria for the tenant satisfaction? Like, how do you measure it? Like, annually, monthly, and is it survey or? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Modesta Anucha, Director of Housing. So there is the annual tenant satisfaction survey, which the regulator, there is a template which we have to follow. So we do that once a year. The result of last year is what is in the pack. And this satisfaction survey will be submitted to the regulator by the 22nd of June. And through that, they will be able to look at areas they might focus their inspection. In addition to this, there is also satisfaction survey that is done at the point that the repairs is carried out by Lambton. What we are doing, we are looking more to develop more robust indicators with Lambton. For example, this doesn't tell you, for example, the repairs that are done first time fix, and it doesn't talk about, it looks at sort of looking at people's perception immediately the repairs are done. So we are carrying out further analysis as to what are the things that will make us understand more how the tenant feels. We are working with the resident group, which is the shadow group we've set up, who are going to be advising us on the areas that they think we should measure with the residents going forward, so that we get a better understanding of what the issues are. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Foot, please.
Can I just have a follow up on that? You talk about that you look at it and then you get your decisions, but do you actually have any other feedback that comes back later, where you see that you've got an occurrence of a problem that's coming from a tenant, and do you check that back to its previous?
So one of the things we are required to do under the new legislation, which is also good practice, is to learn from the complaints. So what we are now doing, we are collecting all the complaints and we are analyzing them so that we can understand the root causes of the complaints and then have an action plan to deal with it. Obviously, we know that areas of concern are about repairs. And when you talk about repairs, so we need to distinguish between where people are raising repairs and where it's about overcrowding or they want to move house. So what we found like last month is that repairs is mentioned in 1 in 5 complaints mentions about repairs. So we are trying to drill down to understand really what is driving it. Is it people that have raised repairs that haven't been done, or people who genuinely want to move, who are overcrowded? We haven't got enough large houses to move people into. You find that overcrowding is synonymous with damp and mold. People don't open their windows because they're overcrowded. So that makes the damp and mold a lot worse than it can be. So we are doing a lot of work through the Healthy Homes program, educating residents, and just working through to understand what are the issues we can address and what are the ones we can't address.
I don't think it's quite answering what I was asking. You know, I'm talking about whether or not you get a recurrence of a problem that a tenant has raised, and can you check that back to see that? Do you know that it is a recurrence, or do you just take it as a new one?
There's two ways. There's two answers to this. Yes, if it's the damp and mold, we've got a whole set up now with the damp and mold team where we can capture that data, but that's something that we've set up. The way that it currently operates it doesn't capture. Well, it can capture, but you answer.
So if I've understood the question, you're talking about recurrent. So somebody raises a complaint, so we deal with it. If it's not answered, it goes to the next stage. It gives us the opportunity to make sure we've looked at it again. And because we capture all the complaints themes, what is about, so if something is recurring, we'll be able to capture it through our learning, because we are now capturing it and monitoring what is recurring. And what we find in terms of what Councillor Sampson was explaining is when it's damp and mold, we have seen that there are residents where we've done the damp and mold washes, and within 6 months it's come up again. So those type of cases, they go through the panel, where the panel look at the case to see whether there's anything we've missed, anything we can do to redress it further. So there is continuous learning from the complaints and from the things coming out to make sure that issues don't recur, that we can address. Obviously, if it's overcrowding, then we can't build our way out of overcrowding. But if it's something around repairs or something we can sort out, then we'll be able to address it, because there is that continuous learning and capturing what is coming out of the complaints.
I wasn't really thinking of overcrowding. I was thinking of complaints about repairs and renewals and things like that. That if they're recurring, do we know they're recurring? Do we check back through our records and find out that they're recurring, and therefore take measures along those lines?
Again, those are some of the things we are doing with Lambton in terms of the performance monitoring. We have the monthly meeting where we look at all the complaints coming through and going through and raising it with them and addressing them. So we do look at those things, and we do pick them up, and we do raise them with Lambton services as part of our contract monitoring.
Any other questions from committee? Oh, Councillor Giles, yeah.
Thank you very much. And I think today was really informative in helping us identify how the council can share and learn best practices with our other housing partners. So I've just got a couple of questions and a few kind of clarifications. So we've been given this how we measure up report. Is this just a clear cut? I'm just wondering whether it's design or whether it's a red light traffic light system with green and red of like areas where we're doing well or areas that need improvement. I just want a clarification on that one first.
Very loosely, yes, traffic light system.
Okay, fantastic, because that helps me with point 4.2 in the report that has highlighted that obviously because there's you've done a huge amount of work in the last 10 months and because of the deadline on the implementation for some of these regulations as being quite quick, you said that we will probably be clustered amongst the lower half of the scale, C3 to C4. So I don't know whether I saw this, but will there be a plan put in place, or are you going to be looking at identifying properties that need maybe some more investment, or even going back to Councillor Foot's point where he's talking about identifying recurring repairs that may need a full overhaul rather than patch jobs, because that was another topic that we're talking about. So I'll leave it at that question for the moment. And then
Well, there is it's a whole whole big area, but going back to what you've just said and picking up from on Richard's point, so we have got the asset management plan. We've got the 5-year program, year on sort of year that we're running. 36 million for each year that's being spent. So if we've got like a recurring, say, issue, it would be, it's false economy to keep just going out and fixing it. But we are building into our systems where that could be picked up a lot earlier than what it has been. But that's ongoing work, that's all the investment's gone into in order to capture that information first, sort of earlier on rather than later. So, but yeah, there is major investment into this area, and we're all going now. We are going in the right direction. Absolutely.
now, and just to pick up on the systems piece, I know that you're waiting for this new system to be implemented. How has the rollout of that gone?
Yep, the rollout started October
for homelessness.
Yeah.
December technically.
Yeah, it was October for the homelessness and December really for the rest. But there's phases, because it's not just one big bang. It's, we have to do it. We implement as we go along.
And do we know what?
Councillor Giles,
Sorry.
my apologies. Last question, and then I'm going to move it to Councillor Tack.
Okay, I'll move on then. On the neighbourhood community slide, this one, you've said in the weaknesses, you've got joint working with registered providers has weaknesses across several areas. Is there a reason why there haven't been defined weaknesses explicitly stated in this?
Yes, there is, and which was picked up again today, where you've got a lot of the housing associations or registered providers where they've merged together. That loss of data or the point of contact for us, for the council, has been lost. So we are now going to be building those relationships. I've had a briefing prior to coming into here. We will be building on those relationships. And today, was a positive meeting, and it's been a long time coming. So, but that's where a lot of the stuff has fallen down, because change of staff, we're not notified, and so on. And then it leaves the council sort of running around, especially when we've got estates that have a consortium, with various associations plus ourselves in the mix.
Thank you, Councillor Sue Sampson. Yes, so there has been, just so you're aware of the information that we sort of had this morning through the date. So that is one of our recommendations that we'll be writing to the Housing Association. Can I please have Councillor Tack now?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at the results of the tenant satisfaction surveys. Yes, we are moving in the right direction. I'm looking at the historical trends. We are moving in the right direction, but there are still questions about the approach, where we are in red or amber. That resonates with the tenant satisfaction measures as well, where the complaints responded and the repairs completed within time scale. We are in red there as well. So there is a clear relation between these two. So it says like we need to improve our approach in listening and working through the time scales. So are we taking some steps towards that?
We are looking at the processes that are currently in place, and we are working towards service improvement, absolutely. But the issue where we found that it's fallen down is through the processes. So we are, building on those to make them stronger and more robust.
Thank you, Councillor Sampson. Any other questions for committee, from committee for the report itself? Just a question for me. So just on page 27, we do have some good sort of scores here. So one is, which I'm keen to sort of understand. So homes that do not meet the decent home standard. So currently standing at 8%. My guess is this figure should go down. Do we have any trend or any past or future performances?
So that is currently sitting at 8%, but we require more investment into those properties to bring them where they need to be. And you know, some of these properties are they're old. You know, they're like listed. There's a whole number of issues that is behind this. So we know what they are. There is a plan for them. Yeah. Yeah, and some of it's access issues. Yeah, there's a whole. It's not. I know the way it looks, but it looks. It's not straightforward. There's a number of answers to behind that, but those are just a couple.
So, would you? I mean, financially, that there's sort of an issue here as well. Or, okay, and would it be just as me just putting it out as a sort of recommendation to the committee as well as yourselves? Could we perhaps speak to Secretary of State to get some more funding here?
Thank you, Chair. Through London councils, we lobby from time to time, and there is a letter at the moment as well that's come back to Secretary of State talking about the burden on local authorities to meet all these new requirements. So there is active lobbying through London councils, housing directors, and the chief executive talking about more investment into social housing, because all this is as a result of underfunding of social housing.
And can I just add as well that the additional cost that the regulatory requirements of us now, just for the regulator alone, you're looking at 100,000. And also for the ombudsman, there's another 50,000. Now, each council are required to pay that. So, you know, that there's an additional financial burden there on us to do this. So, you know, our money's tight. We know that.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone else? Councillor Foot.
Sorry. Yeah, the complaints responded to within complaint handling code timescales, 77%. I mean, you've marked these in red. I'm presuming that's to alert yourself to that it's a standard that you would prefer to be better than that.
Absolutely, of course.
Yeah, and are we achieving any advances in that?
I think if you look at the customer satisfaction from a year ago, you'll see that we are moving in the right direction.
I don't have last year's papers with me.
No, but you'll see that we are moving in the right direction. But we've still got a way to go, but we'll get there.
And also, I was just gonna mention, yes, I mean, this is quite new for the council, so I'm sure we'll be sort of coming back to this probably next year to see where our progress is from now or today till next year. I'll take the last question, Councillor Charles, please.
Thank you. I'm just going to slip in my last question about the systems piece. Do we know what the adoption rates are and how that's improving case management when it comes to supporting our tenants with the new ICT system?
I mean, adoption.
So, like, basically, whenever you have a new system rollout, you get adoption rates to understand how effective that transformation has been. So understanding like how many of your cases are now being put in through the system, whether that's actually helping facilitate facilitating you to support your new processes and delivery.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Ben Tomlinson, Head of Housing Planning Resources. I don't think there's a direct analogue with our own systems for that, but I can say with confidence that the number of cases logged in the new system NEC housing has increased over ohms, the old legacy system. We're able to log a whole range of things and cross-tabulate it against issues that we simply couldn't record in the historical legacy system. So both the number of cases is increased and also the extent of what we're able to record about those cases. So really a quantum increase in the quality of our performance information within the department, which has been stated by colleagues earlier, assists us with building in improvements, reflecting on areas of weakness, and generally having a continuous service improvement culture in the department. So a huge asset to us, and we'll be able to get you figures at some point, but qualitatively a huge improvement. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Ben. Is there any other questions from committee members with us? Oh, there it is, the sly little hand there from Councillor Tack. There we go.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned about extra regulatory cost earlier that we need to spend on. Did we explore on whether there is any funding available for that from either central government or Greater London Authority?
There is no funding. There is no funding.
Thank you. Okay, so that's great. Lots of great points there. So we kind of move in now where the committee will get together to sort of deliberate and see what sort of recommendations going forward. So we can all sort of take in turns or anything that we want Cabinet to do going forward. Not all at once. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah, one of the important things is to be able to see how we're progressing year on year. And I know you came last year and you're back again with us this year, but it's quite important that we see which way the trends are going on these things in that. And I think that this annual report back from the housing department I count as being valuable, and perhaps we can make sure that we get the way in which we can relate it.
And most definitely. And we've come a long way from where we were. We've got a way to go, but certainly with the new systems and the way that we can now work with the new system in gaining more information and so on. So this time next year we'll be in a very different place again. So, but I'm happy to bring back the annual reports from, say, even from 22 right through to last year, this year, next year. So then you can see that trend of traffic. Because I appreciate you haven't got all that paperwork in front of you, but I do know that we are moving forward.
Thank you for that. Okay, so a couple of recommendations that I'm sort of looking at here. So develop a monitoring process for the complaints with Lambton. So making sure that's really kind of quite robust with that complaints sort of system there. Enhance communications with housing associations. So you touch upon sort of staff turnover. So fine, we've got housing associations that will hopefully do their bit, but what can we do to maybe help them even to do our bit as well, going forward? And the only other sort of thing really is just the 8% decency home standards, just to have a look and see if that investment, or try and get some of that investment by talking to London councils, just to bring that figure down. That would be a real nice little ask next year, hopefully. And the other recommendation is just and recommending just multi-year trends, as committee was. So maybe sort of present, a year before and a year after, sort of 3 years or whatever, sort of easier for your teams just to see trends. Maybe even a bit of a graph there, a bit of a line graph. Be quite nice. Yeah.
What we could do, Chair, as well, is that we could actually show you what was in place. I can only talk from 22, okay? But what was in place then, you know, how it's progressed into 23 and, you know, 24. And, you know, when I come back, maybe whenever I come back, when you invite me, we can show you where we are then, and you will see the work and how it is transforming. Absolutely.
No, brilliant. Thank you, Councillor. No, it's and we sort of did this the other time that we sort of met up with housing with regards to repairs and how well we did over the years. So again, well done to you and your team. I do need to get votes and recommendations for this from the committee. Are we all in agreement with those current recommendations? Happy with that? So I do need to just have the votes on that. Thank you very much. And that is passed. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so we do move on to and thank you. Yes, of course. Thank you, Councillor Samson, Modesta, and Ben. I know you've had a very long day today. I'm sure you just want to get out of here as quickly as possible. But yes, of course. Thank you all. We give a few moments. Okay, so we move on to agenda item number 5. So this is community safety, antisocial behaviour, male domestic violence and homophobic attacks. Following on from that discussion, we now turn to the next agenda item. We have asked for an update on the work of the on the work the council does to keep residents safe. And members will remember we were particularly interested in antisocial behaviour, male domestic violence and homophobic attacks. The report we have before us details the work the council and its partners do to address these issues. We are asked to consider the work undertaken to tackle antisocial behaviour, homophobic attacks and male domestic violence items. We are joined this evening by Councillor Ajmer Girwal, Cabinet Member for Safety and Regulatory Services, and Elliot Brooks, Director of Communities and it's just Elliot. There we are. Yeah. Thank you. Welcome to all of you. Councillor Girwal, if I can ask you to introduce your report, you do have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. As lead member for Safety and Regularity Services and the chair of the Hounslow Community Safety Partnership Board, I understand crime can have a devastating impact on individuals, communities, and can contribute to negative feelings of safety and the fear of crime. That's why I'm committed to making the borough safer. Consistently, Hounslow has lower than London average crime levels, and we should be proud of this, but we know there is a lot more we can do. The work we need to do has been outlined in the Safer Community Strategy 2024 to 2027, which was approved by Borough Council in March 2024. The strategy sets out our plans over the next 3 years, focusing on 3 key priorities. Residents are less affected by serious crime. Young people and adults exposed to and exploited to commit crimes to receive help, and residents work together to keep Hounslow safe. Our overall ambition is simple. We want our communities to be safe and feel safe. To deliver on this, we focus on preventing crimes and protecting residents by providing early help and support in local areas, and empowering communities to work with us to keep crime low in their neighbourhoods. I'm pleased to report that we have already started this work, and to enhance it, an additional 7 new roles have been created in the Council's Safer Communities operational team. The staff will directly work with communities addressing non-HRA antisocial behaviour and patrolling the borough and, where necessary, using enforcement powers to address concerns. For this ambition to be delivered successfully, we will continue to strengthen our working relationship with the police and other partners. In addition to this, as part of the Council's corporate work programme on improving our resident experience, we are developing a new Safer Communities target operating model. This will improve how we respond to crime, antisocial behaviour, and other community safety issues. This work is being managed by Safer Communities Improvement Programme Board, and the proposal on the model will be presented at Cabinet in June 2024. This evening, we are focusing on 3 specific areas: antisocial behaviour, homophobic attacks, and male domestic violence. All 3 areas are considered high risk, and we have skilled staff to support and advise victims, and where appropriate, will work with our partners to safeguard them. You will see from the report we have dedicated housing ASB team, and a new non-housing ASB offer will be introduced. We work closely with the Pan-London Hate Crime Service Catch and police to support residents who are affected by homophobic hate crime. Our domestic and sexual abuse team work directly with male victims of domestic abuse. The majority of victims are fathers, and the perpetrators are a family member. Now, before we start questions, I wanted to point out an error which has been retrospectively identified in the report. This is on page 37.3.6.5, and the figure 45 should read 47. And I also just want to say that the team's been working extremely hard, and we have managed to win a bid from the VRU for £280,000 for 2 years. And this is to deliver targeted violence prevention and reduction work in Feltham and Hounslow town centres, working with our established partners, Perfectly Imperfect and Can You Challenge. So with that, I'll leave it to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Gilwell. That's great bit of information and great news. It's always good to see that that the figures are coming down. But I'll pass it to the committee members. Councillor Tuck, please.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned about 7 new roles being created to tackle antisocial behaviour. At the moment, our enforcement team, as far as I know, was made up of the team of 2. So these 7 people, whether they will be part of the enforcement team to tackle antisocial behavior or something different.
Thank you, Councillor Tack. Just to clarify there, so at the moment our enforcement service, so neighbourhood enforcement, is 32 officers. So I'm not sure the 2 that you might be thinking of. The roles that Permjit alluded to were, and you may remember a cabinet report previously, the council's funded police team has reduced in size from 13 officers down to 4 officers now, which are concentrated very much on the council's housing estates funded by the HRA. There was a decision there to redirect the resources previously allocated to that service into some new roles to enhance the Safer Communities team aimed at keeping people safe. So there are a mixture of roles around enforcement, visible presence on places like parks and sort of hotspots around the borough. There's the non-housing ASB roles that Permjit alluded to, and there are more preventative roles working with young people and adolescents. So it's the 7 basically the 7 police officers that were reduced out of the funded team are being replaced by 7 internal council roles to fill that gap and approach it in a slightly different way. But the enforcement team and service that we've had for a number of years now, I don't know if you're getting it a bit mixed up, but it's 32 or 31 officers at the moment.
Thank you. Any other questions from? Oh, yeah. Okay. We've got. I think it was Councillor Cameron first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, what open data is available for people or a public to understand the council performance regarding the antisocial behavior and volumes? Can I repeat it?
Could you repeat it? Yeah.
Yeah. What open data is available for public to understand the council performance
Ah.
regarding the antisocial behavior and volumes? Thank you.
So on a quarterly basis, the council produces its quarterly performance report. And I think within that, I haven't got them off the top of my head, but we do have 3 or 4 indicators which are around community safety and antisocial behaviour. They are both around some crime levels, around robbery. We have issues around domestic abuse within those performance indicators and general antisocial behaviour. But we have lots more information that's to hand if people want it, and if members in particular. But that information is published quarterly through the council's performance report.
And also, if I may, the police dashboard is open to the public as well to check.
Thank you. Councillor Mollick, please.
Okay, my question is to the team is, what is the reasonable timeline between receiving a complaint and dealing with issues? And second part, is there any sort of prioritization in the cases where there are ASB impact, several people on the well-being of the multiple residents in immediate area?
Happy to answer. So at the moment, what we have in the council is a dedicated team for our tenants living in our housing stock. So we don't actually have an offer for those that are not council tenants. So that offer is going to be introduced by having 2 new officers, and we recruited one of those 2 officers. So Mick, I don't know whether you want to answer in terms of how we respond to ASB in our housing stock.
Thanks, Councillor. I'm Mick Pena, the Assistant Director for Housing Tenancy Management. We have you'll probably be aware, we have a dedicated ASB team that sits within the housing service. In terms of people reporting and what they can expect, we do have an SLA. I don't have the figures in front of me, but with something like a grade 1, would you expect somebody to get back to somebody within 24 hours? I think for the lower level ASB, it may be 5 days, but there is an SLA that we adhere to.
My question is, if there's a multiple occupant on the same blocks of flat and they're having issue with ASB, how long will it take you to react?
So as I said, if there's a report for ASB, if it's classified as a grade 1, I think we respond within 24 hours. For lower level ASB, I think we respond within 5 days. I can get back to you with the figures if those are incorrect, but I'm pretty sure that's our SLA.
Thank you. And Councillor Foot, please.
Yeah, it was a bit confusing as to whether or not, when we looked at the size of the teams, and you know, we were talking about numbers, there were numbers on bits and pieces of it. What I couldn't get my head round was whether the size of the overall size of the teams in total, is it decreased in the life of this council, or is it increased, or is it remaining the same?
So it's increased by the 7 officers.
That 7 officers is in addition to what was already there, but we haven't taken any away. They're not replacements or moving people around.
No.
Okay, right, fine, thank you.
Sorry, is that, so you got 32 already, plus 7, so that's increased to 39, is that correct?
So just to distinguish, so the 32 that I referred to are specifically enforcement service. So it's not the ASB team or the housing ASB team. There's an enforcement service that that's been established for a number of years now that do a mixture of proactive responses to situations that are taking place live, but they also do patrolling around our councils, housing estates and hotspots across the borough. So that's an enforcement service. And then within the housing team, there's a designated housing ASB team. And then within the Safer Communities team, as Permjit has been explaining, due to some new resources being freed up, we're about to introduce some new roles, and some of those will be to tackle antisocial behaviour on the non-council housing estates and areas across the borough. I think Councillor Growell mentioned in her introduction, there's actually a report going to the council's cabinet in June, which is to articulate the overarching operating model in this space.
Thank you, Councillor Giles.
Section 3.7, thanks. I suppose for me, it's very interesting that homophobic, nobody should be the subject of any sort of attacks for use of discrimination. But I was just wondering, do we have an anti-homophobia policy, or like how we support homophobic attack or victims of homophobic attack? Do we have a policy that kind of supports both of those within the council? So I do realise they're slightly separate but related.
Separate but a straightforward answer. The answer is no. We don't have that policy in itself, a hate crime policy or a homophobic attack policy. What we've tried to explain today is how those cases, when they come into the council or our partners, are dealt with.
Well, thank you, Councillor Sharma.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is also with regards to homophobic attacks. On 3.7.3, it says about the West Area Basic Command Unit's latest statistics, January to December 23, indicate there was an increase in the number of reports from the previous year. 33.9% equated to 75 offences. And then in January to December 22, the police recorded 56. So that's 55 additional. Do we know do we know the reason why it's now more? And also in 3.7.4, it says that sort of there's normally a spike in LGBTQ cases in the summer months, and this usually coincides with Pride. What are we doing to try to mitigate those offences that take place during Pride Month? Sorry.
Evening, everybody. I'm Pete Truman. I'm the police officer for Hounslow as the hate crime performance and outcomes officer. So I cover all hate crimes, but obviously I've put together this information for homophobic incidents. The rise from 2022 to 2023 is it's just under 20 attacks. So it was 56 in the year from January, and then 75 the following year. That's just for a homophobic incidents. That's not transphobic. Transphobic was 13, the same in both years. Expected rises, we constantly see generally over the last, if you take away the lockdown sort of period, we're seeing a slow, steady rise in the number of hate crimes. Part of me would like to think that that's because we are empowering communities to want to report things, and we are being better as police, and that people are trusting us more with this. Part of me also believes that there is just a lot of hate in the world, and so therefore we do get quite a lot of hate towards different communities. I will say over the last couple of years, there's a group mainly working within Hounslow called West London Queer Project, who have done a lot of work at trying to build social events and different things for people within the LGBT plus community to go and feel part of the community. And I think obviously sometimes with an increased awareness of communities, you do often see an increase in hate towards that community. So there are a few things. There's a steady rise generally that will happen. And I imagine next year we will see another rise in hate crime as more people come forward. When it comes to the summer months and the peaks, that's the same for all hate crime. There's very much a bell curve with hate crime. In the summer months, people are just not as nice to each other as they are in the winter months. Christmas spirit. I don't know. But we do see a rise a lot more with the LGBT community in the summer because of events that happen in Pride, and again, that increased awareness. Not only am I a police officer, I'm also actually part of the LGBT network within the police. And as such, we know the work that we're trying to do to improve the community's trust and confidence within us. So I know there is a lot of sort of background work that goes on to try and improve our response. All hate crime, regardless of whether it is very low level. I know the word in there is attack, and attack does indicate maybe more physical things, and actually the majority would be more verbal abuse. But I would say any reports to us will be flagged. We have our new policing system in place that it means they're automatically tagged if people tick the button right at the start. And if not, that's what I'm there for, to make sure that they are picked up and referred to the services for victim support if needs be.
Councillor Giles.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much for that explanation. I think I should probably declare an interest in the fact that I have been to West London Queer Project events, and they've done fantastic things in raising, and they're very welcoming spaces, which is what we want to see more of. But I think what I just want to move on to point 3.8.2, where we move on to male domestic violence, and it kind of does relate to items earlier in the report. I was intrigued by the sentence talking about when men are victims of abusive relation, leaving that relationship is less likely to increase their risk. Moving on to the next sentence, this is also relevant in same-sex relationships. I was just wondering, because the data for this statement comes from Women's Aid, is this looking at male same-sex relationships, especially given the fact that we've seen an increase in cuckooing in the borough? I'd like a bit more of a clarification point on that, because I feel like there's an opportunity there to support people when they are in a domestic violence situation.
Thank you, Councillor, for that question. So regardless of your gender or your sexual orientation, the Hounslow's domestic and sexual abuse team will work with any victim. So I think in the report it outlines that it's a bespoke service. So depending on what the relationship is, maybe what your cultural background is as well, and your age, the response will be bespoke. So there isn't a kind of one size fits all. So we'll work individually with those victims, and the quote that we put in there is from Women's Aid. So it is research that's done in terms of the experiences of women who are in heterosexual relationships and the experiences they have compared to male victims in heterosexual relationships. So in this report, because the numbers are so small, can't really share anything that's under 10, so that makes it a bit difficult. But what I can share is that the majority of victims that we do work with are usually older fathers, where the perpetrator is either a male adult child or a male sibling. So that's what we come across the majority of the time.
Can I? Yeah, I think I fully understood that from within the report. I think for me, it's just understanding, are there other data sets, for example, that show that this quote, because it's very much attributed to Women's Aid here, in light of the increase in cuckooing that we've seen. And I think we saw, 11 more cases, 11 new referrals in the last year. And we have seen that. And obviously, we're looking at a subsect of society that may already feel not connected, and there can be power dynamics at play there. So I understand that there is a bespoke service for a situation, but it's for me, it's about looking after people who may not necessarily know the routes to help, or to gain help rather.
So we wouldn't class cuckooing cases as domestic abuse. So domestic abuse is where you've had either intimate relationship or an ex-partner, or you're related to them. So with cuckooing, it's often strangers that have taken over a property where there's someone vulnerable, whether it's mental health issues or substance misuse. That's the cuckooing definition that we work to.
Okay, I didn't think, maybe we needed a clarification of that definition within the paper.
Okay, so I'm just going to look at another question here. So, with regards to all this, what are the sort of response times for any sort of abuse? It doesn't matter what it is.
So with domestic abuse, so it is very much based on a risk assessment. So if it's high risk, we will respond to it immediately. We also have the domestic, the daily MARIC, which is a multi-agency risk assessment. So that happens every day. So where a case is considered high risk, and that's based on a national framework that is used by all local authorities and independent charities, then that case will be looked at in as soon as possible. And we work closely with the police in terms of those responses, and also where there's children involved, children's social care and adult social care as well. So it will really depend on the risk of that individual when it comes to domestic abuse. Vic, I don't know whether you want to respond to the ASB side.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I will seek clarification on those ASB responses. We do have an SLA. I've quoted some figures tonight, but I'm going to go away and make sure that I report back to the panel on those response times. But we do have a response to grade ones, which are the more risky ASB incidents, and the grade twos.
So just to clarify that point, so this is within sort of 24 hours or 12 hours or 4 hours? Or?
So for ASB, so for the housing ASB team, the housing ASB team that sits within the housing team and not within community safety, as ASB incidents come in, they're graded as a grade 1 or a grade 2. My understanding at this time is that for our grade 1 incidents, we respond within the 24-hour period or 1 working day. For the grade 2s, it's 5 working days, but I will seek clarification to make sure those figures are correct.
Thank you. If we could, I think it'd be quite nice if the committee could.
Sorry,
get
can I
that
just
afterwards.
add that when referrals come through the police, they've already done their risk assessment, and children's are done through MASH. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Yeah. Any other questions from anyone else? Councillor Mullock?
Just like to point out, page 37, 36.5, it would have been easier if you make it simpler, right? How many cases you received in 22 and 23, and how many resolved, and same from the other. It's all jargon mixed up. It's make it easier for the panel to see.
Thank you. We'll keep that in mind next time.
Okay, thank you all. I mean, is everyone sort of happy with the report? Can we sort of move on now and sort of talk about the committee? Or is there any other questions that we'd like to put to the officers or Councillor Gilroy? Okay, brilliant. So we'll move on to now just what we can sort of recommend with to Cabinet. So I've got a couple of pointers here, and of course, feel free to throw it in, whatever sort of recommendation, and we can have a good old go at it. Anything from anyone? Okay, all right. Let's have a look here. So we would like to sort of see figures, a bit of a breakdown with officers, to be fair. So just getting clarification of what sort of officers we have, community officers, non-community officers, SBO officers, whatever. So let's get a really good sort of figure there, given out to everyone, so we know exactly what we have. The other thing is kind of recommending any exploration to these hate crimes. I'm not sure. It doesn't matter, again, homophobic, transphobic, it doesn't really matter. But if we can sort of measure it somehow or explore the reasons to why this is happening, try and, mitigate it from happening. Can we sort of look at that as well? Could we look at that, or maybe not? So exploring avenues, so exploring the reason to why this is happening.
Thank you, Councillor. I would love to say that there is one reason for these things to happen, but all officers get training, and one of the things I train every 5 weeks, the new officers come to me and I get a whole day with them to talk about hate crime. I talk about various communities. We take them to the mosque, we take them to Kadvara. I talked about the LGBT plus community. I even teach them sign language. One of the things we talk about is that there's no real one specific reason for it can be a spur of the moment incident. It could be a motivated incident where the ideology is behind this. They're the ones that really, when we come to things like Mareks and meetings like that, we can potentially target and stop them. Human nature, unfortunately, means that those sort of spur of the moment, off the cuff ones just will always happen. It will always be almost impossible to say never will those things be said and happen. But there are motivations and there are things we can do, I think, around empowering the community to report them when they do happen, as opposed to not just tackling them but looking at how do we get more people telling us where they're happening and getting that sort of support from the community as well.
The only other sort of thing for me is that if somebody's a reoccurring offender, clearly there's something there, isn't it?
So one of my many things that I do on a daily basis is I look at all previous repeat victims, repeat suspects. We look at Achilles heel tactics for repeat suspects. Just as an example, many of these stats that I've given you today is actually one suspect and victim that I worked on for about 6-7 months with the housing team to move the perpetrator and injunctions and CBOs through the courts to try and stop this. And actually that has now worked. And so there are Achilles tactics. And when there are repeat victims and repeat suspects, I will quite often email Permgist and be like, hi, this is somebody we need to look at for stopping this from future incidents.
Thank you. And I guess the other sort of recommendation is just decreasing response times for antisocial behaviour. So I do appreciate we've sort of banged on about this a bit, but just trying to get it as quickly as possible. I guess if we're able to do that, that'd be great as well. Are all the committee members in favour of these recommendations? Yep, thank you. Yeah, it's just vote. Yep, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for that. And thank you all the officers here and Councillor Giriwal as well, Elliot and his team as well. Sorry, we don't have name tags, or I would have sort of said by name, but thank you all. It's a great piece of work. And we just need to move forward with that. And hopefully we just get. Oh, just before I do move, are we just getting better people, more people just saying yes, this is happening to me?
More work happening in the public in terms of raising awareness, and I think Pete alluded to that as well. So people are getting more familiar with routes to report, and we're encouraging that because we know it's underreported anyway. Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Okay, so we move on to now agenda item number 6, the delivery plan monitoring Q4 2023-24. So for well over a year now, the delivery plan has been a regular topic at Scrutiny. There is good reason for this. The delivery plan is designed to help our transformation efforts, which in turn help address some of the financial pressures we have considered on a regular basis as a committee. We have the opportunity tonight to scrutinise the council's work across 4 portfolios: people, place, capital and digital. We are joined by Councillor Shantanu Rajwat, Leader of the Council, Andrew Cox, who is now the Director of Climate and Strategy Programmes, and Mark Lumley, Director of Digital IT. Councillor Rajwat, may you introduce a report? You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Chair, you always do a fantastic job of introducing the celebrating success where that is the case. And there are a number of successes in this report. So, Chair, as you said, there are 4 main portfolios: the people, place, capital and digital, and all of them have various different items. We're absolutely committed to delivering long-term change in our services that not only deliver savings, as you mentioned, but also improve on the experience our residents have and their interactions with this council and the partners as well, because this is something that we have to do in partnership. And the report before you sort of evidences some of those partnerships and how they're going. Some of them will take time to develop. Some of them are developed, but the programs will take time, and others are well on their way. So, formally sorry, that's not my job to move the report. Sorry. Formally present the report to Scrutiny colleagues, and very happy to take questions, Chair.
No, that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. But is the committee happy? And then we can, of course, hear the report. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, please introduce your report. Is that it? That's, come on. Any questions to the report? It is quite substantial. Of course, we've all received it. It's quite a lot in there. I will sort of kick off the question here. Really, for me, it's a case of digitalness within council. So, progress really about the digital portfolio will be absolutely fabulous where we are compared to what we were a year or even 2 years ago.
So if I make a start, and then I'll bring in Mark to fill in some of the details. So a lot of work in the digital strategy portfolio. So you'll recall it was about a year ago, wasn't it, that we segregated out the digital portfolio from it was at the time and the place, wasn't it? People, sorry, in the people portfolio. And that was just an acknowledgement that actually it was such a standalone piece of work, standalone portfolio that encompassed the entire authority and a lot of the work that was in there. There have been a number of sort of triumphs, if you like, within the portfolio programs started or achieved, but there is a lot of work, and it is very closely aligned with a lot of our transforming the community experience work, which will go for a lot longer. So with some of these programs, we have to accept, both as administration, and I hope Scrutiny will accept as well, that some of those are longer burn programs that need to work side by side with some of the transformation work that's going on as well. So I'll hand over to Mark.
So Mark Lumley, I think the only thing I'll add to that committee, I think, is there's an element of the portfolio as well, which is about resiliency and keeping the lights on, business as usual, keeping things cyber secure as well. So there's a range of transformation programs, projects within the portfolio. There's a range of digital enabling, rest of the other portfolios in the delivery plan. But there is a number of items in there that are about replacing out-of-date kit and unsupported kit, to make sure we are on supported versions and are taking that cybersecurity and the protection of information of our residents very seriously. So I think there's a range of different applications in there. There's a couple of major projects in there, and they're in the report as well, which are replacing sort of legacy, so old systems that have been around for quite a chunk of time. So really good progress has been made on those few applications as well. So I think there's a range of things in there. The only other thing I'll mention is the digital inclusion commitment side as well. So the council is absolutely committed to making sure that we not just put the information and services online. We make sure that our residents and communities are able to have the connectivity, the devices and the skills as well. So that's absolute part of that.
Thank you for that. I'm just going to do a follow-up question with this. So, is the transformation, what areas is it, I guess, affecting the council at the moment, or if any?
To be fair, Chair, it's everywhere. It's across the council. So when you look into some of the details, we're going all the way through to the what you'd consider traditional digital systems, equipment, but also things like fleet management and right across the council. In every part of the council, there is something that will touch digital, and so I hope you get the detail in the report because quite a bit of it is covered.
Thank you. Any Councillor Giles?
Thank you very much. I'm trying to compare between what's I've got in my printout, and what's on the screen, because not all of it came out in color coded. So I'm here trying to see what's going on. Just a quick question on the well, a couple of questions, but I'll try and keep them quick. In the place portfolio progress, there are a number of projects that are still in the red, and I understand that there have been multiple factors as to why these may have been delayed. Do you guys have any target delivery dates of when you would like these to be achieved by? Because I feel like there are some which could be as long as a piece of string, but if we know that a project may fall within the next financial year, it might be a bit more manageable than knowing if it's going to be maybe 2 or 3 years out.
So just to start, and Andrew will fill in some of the details. So perhaps you don't have that detail in the report, but for each of these pieces of work, there is a project board that meets very, very regularly and talks about progress. On some of them, you're absolutely right to point out the delay, but some of those are external factors that we don't necessarily have control of. Where there is internal control on some of those factors, obviously the aim is to deliver them as soon as possible because potentially there is a cashable benefit for the authority, but we have to be realistic in terms of capacity within the authority, time, and the ability to deliver it. So what I wouldn't want to do is push the team to say something's been delivered and then not have the capacity to be able to deliver it, or it doesn't get delivered as was expected. And that agility is really, really important. So that is probably detail that the board, that each individual board would know. I mean, would it be helpful if we started putting that sort of information on here? There's a question.
Can I answer?
Yeah, I mean, look, so we do get some of that information, of course, at the end of year MTFS. So we do get some of that information anyway. But if we do then delivery plan moving forward, then as long as it's okay with the team, then yeah, we can certainly have a look at progress. It probably wouldn't be much difference between one meeting to another. To be fair, I think MTF or end of year is probably better.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just like looking at the specific examples, like those listed under 5.4. There are ones that may well fall in our next financial year, but there may be other projects that may not. So is it worthwhile putting resources towards them in the next financial year, knowing that actually it will be a more realistic achievement in the year after, and then resources can be used elsewhere? I think that's where I'm looking at those timelines and kind of getting understanding of how relevant those or how impactful those delays could be.
Okay, so would it be helpful for committee then to have maybe an update of where we are when we look at delivery plan? An update, would that be better?
So if I may assist, thank you for referencing the bit in the report that you're particularly looking at, because all of those in 5.4 are longer term projects where there is a external. So actually on those ones, potentially, we may not even be able to give you a timeline just yet. Of course, the impact, when you look at the risk side of it, is big because we're looking at 2 big housing projects and a redevelopment of a art centre, as well as, well, in fact, 3 housing and then an art centre. Those are longer term. Do you want to add some?
Yeah, I
meat to
can add, I can add some flavor. So Andrew Cox, Director of Climate and Strategic Programs. I think there's two sort of key things. Yes, as the leader said, these are really long-term projects. So actually they're not single year. But what we need to do is make sure that we're really clear on the plan and then making sure we're profiling the budgets against that plan so that actually we're only making sure we've got the right money available for the effort within that year. So that is a piece of work that is absolutely critical. We've got a really dedicated piece of work ongoing around that at the moment, around the whole capital programme, to make sure we've got that alignment. So actually, Jake and his team are only actually drawing down the money we need and borrowing the money we need for the expected spend in that year, rather than based on an overestimation of it, because we're not meant to get taking into account those risks.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was asking.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding the reports? Councillor Monk.
Yeah, I'd just like to know, just for information only, on page 49, on the top of the page, it says they completed 55 out of 62 projects. Would have been nice to know what project are completed and what are the outstanding for the committee to know, and what sort of budget was for those 55 projects which was completed.
So some of that detail, Councillor Malik, will be in the appendix of the reports. So there'll be some information in the appendix. I think Councillor Sharma was just pointing them out to you. And in terms of the budget, there's a profile in the budget report that you get in February with the allocations of budgets in both capital and revenue that you can compare that against. If you like that detailed in a consolidated report, I'm happy to provide that. That's not a problem.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other Councillor Tuck? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Me specifically, being from IT background, one of the project, a particular project caught my eyes on page 109 and 10, which is the development of a cloud solution which was closed. And I see here the capital cost was moved to revenue. So does that mean we lost money on trying to implement that project, or was the cost borne by the supplier or contractor?
Yeah, I can pick that up. A bit of both, actually. So it's been a quite a complicated project, and the supplier system wasn't fit for purpose, so the decision was made not to continue with that. So there will be some funding back to revenue because no capital was the asset wasn't produced. So we're looking at that now in terms of the wider TCE program of work and options available. So I think the best way of me describing it is there's ongoing discussions with the supplier around that project. So there is a bit of both around our investment and their input into that.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor.
Well, in general terms, when a system is not fit for purpose or is not as per the requirements, the costs and everything is borne by the supplier and not by us. So was it like our contract was not that lucrative to enforce this, or?
So in terms of, so absolutely in terms of the cost to the supplier, nothing paid, minimal paid. The cost in there at the moment is around staffing costs for IT staff because we capitalise that. But again, there's ongoing discussions with the supplier and other local authorities on that.
Any other questions from any other committee members? No? Okay, brilliant. Okay, so thank you for that. So we kind of moved to the recommendations here. Anything from any committee member with what we should be doing moving forward, or what we should be asking the Deputy?
I think we've already made them in our questions.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. So really it's just noting, and thank you so much for introducing the report. I think there is a lot of information there And I do appreciate that there's sort of constraints with finance and stuff with some of those projects. I'm sure some of those projects that the council would love to have get up and running. But we'll see how that goes. But thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Andrew. But we'll move on. Okay, so we move on to agenda item number 7 here. So this is children and young people scrutiny panel recommendations. Each year, our 3 scrutiny panels undertake deep dives into specific issues. We receive updates on this work each time we meet, and these deep dives included in our scrutiny annual report for all to see, are an important opportunity for scrutiny to play a role in policy development. A number of us on OSC proper have rightly been keen to understand the impact of these recommendations in terms both of whether or not recommendations are accepted and what impact the scrutiny panel's contributions have. This month, following the cancellation of April's meeting, we are looking back at the recommendations made by the Children and Young People Scrutiny Panels 2022-23, chaired by former Councillor Laura Perisotto. The panel looked at how the council provided support for looked after children with immigration status support needs, focusing particularly on unaccompanied asylum seeking children. I know both Councillor Butt and Councillor Sharma sat on that panel and will, like the rest of us, be keen to understand what has come past since the recommendations were shared with Cabinet members. We are joined this evening by Councillor Lily Bath, Cabinet Member for Education, Children's Skills and Employment, and by Stephen Forms, Executive Director of Children and Young and Children's Services. Welcome to you both. We are asked to note the progress of the recommendations. So, Councillor Bath, is there anything that you would like to discuss with the committee?
Yeah, thank you. Well, actually, I wanted to thank you first for carrying out this deep dive study way back when you did, because obviously it's really relevant to Hounslow, as you know, that Hounslow is disproportionately impacted by those seeking asylum because of the government policy to use contingency hotels. So obviously that presents a challenge for us. We welcome those that are seeking asylum and those families and children, but often it presents a challenge for us, particularly in terms of supporting them and in terms of budget challenges and pressures as well. And I think during over the last few months, we've had a budget pressure of at least 1.9 million in terms of how we support these families. But in terms of the actual recommendations which we'd accepted earlier on, this report really is a progress on what we have done, and the table in the report indicates where we've kind of continued the work that we said that we would do. Some of it obviously falls into the existing duties that statutory duties that we have towards asylum seeking and looked after children, and some of it is new stuff that we've initiated. I also wanted to sort of I wanted you to note that we also recently passed a motion at Borough Council where we would recognise those that are looked after children, or those with lived experiences, to be recognised as having a protected characteristics. Because obviously the legislation doesn't do that. So that enables us as a councillor to have a particular focus on supporting. So I just wanted to reassure the scrutiny panel on that point. But we will obviously, I'm asking you to note the progress that we've made today, and happy to take questions, but we will continue to support
asylum seeking families and those with children, and in terms of their immigration process where we can, obviously. And yeah, happy to take. Not only is it helpful for us, but we know that those families with children seeking asylum and unaccompanied asylum seeking children are some of the most vulnerable that we have in our society. So it's really important that we make sure that we do what we can to support them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Bath there. And it's good to see that we're making sort of progress in this sort of area. But is there any sort of questions from the committee to Councillor Bath?
Sorry.
Yep.
Yes, thank you. So I think my question is more or less like the same one that I asked earlier around the adult social care. And it's again, it's understanding the completion rates across some of those recommendations from last year. Obviously, if things are 100% completed or ongoing, or we've completed as much as we can with then ongoing ongoing work. I think for me, it's just nice to have a little tracker on that. Personally,
I think, would you like to answer that, Stephen?
I know it's
Yeah.
probably similar as before, but
Yeah, I think it
I
probably
like a
is.
good tracker.
So in response, Councillor, it is similar to before, and I think particularly here because the deep dive looked at, because we were under significant pressure, if I take everybody back about 2 years ago, with particularly the Atrium Hotel, where we were receiving on average every day 20, 30 self-declaring unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. So this deep dive, if we put it into context, came out of that experience. I think it was useful for us, as Councillor Bath says, for deep dive group to have a look at this, to assure themselves that we were able to respond. Now going forward, and I think if you look at the table where all the recommendations were about immigration status of children coming in, these are standard processes for us. So a child becomes automatically looked after by the local authority immediately once they are identified as unaccompanied. So the completion rate is 100% and will continue to be so. There was a period in that September where we had one day 35 children declare at the hotel that I did not have enough social work practitioners to respond. So for one day, we didn't succeed in that threshold. But across the board, we're now establishing it. The good news in context now is that the Home Office have chosen to close down 4 of the contingency hotels, and the pace has now settled. So we will continue to deliver these standard processes. So technically, progress is 100%, but ongoing. But I'm more confident now because of the number that we're able to meet that demand. But when we were at that point where we were getting 20, 30 a day, we're not resourced to respond to that. And I was fairly robust with our Home Office colleagues about what they'd chosen to do and the impact it had on us as a local authority. The bit I would say, which is not completion, and you notice at the end of the report, are the external recommendations from the deep dive, which are related predominantly to the Home Office. And I do have to say on one of those, we have seen an improvement, which is the age at relevant screening at point of entry port, Manston, which is the screening facility in Kent, and children appearing here. So we see less children who are obviously under the age of 18, and myself and Home Office colleagues will dispute that use of that word, obviously, but I still have a photograph on this machine of someone that the Home Office identified as being over 21, and on a good day, I would have put him at 15. So they've got better at that. The bit they haven't got about were the 2 recommendations about notice to us of people coming and notice to us of people leaving. And we make no progress with Home Office colleagues on that. Their solution to us is access to their database, which is what Ready Homes or contractor supplies, and it is always at least a day and a half out of date. But we continue to engage with them about notification. And my particular one at the moment is when children move from this borough to another borough, if they move them from a hotel here to somewhere else, we have a legal duty as the local authority to advise and to identify children missing education. And to date, the Home Office will not tell us where those children go to. So I cannot comply with the obligation to make sure those children are not missing education because I don't know which local authority they have landed in. So we don't complete that one because we don't get traction with our Home Office colleagues, regrettably.
Thank you, Stephen, for that. Any other sort of questions from any other committee? Councillor Mallock there.
Just for information, I'd just like to know how many children we have unaccompanied in the borough seeking asylum.
We currently, today, the number goes up and down about 1 or 2. We currently have, I think, 59 looked after children who are unaccompanied asylum seeking children. And we have, I think, 360 plus or minus formerly looked after children who were asylum seeking, who are now care leavers. So we have, as Councillor Bath says, we're disproportionately affected because most of the unaccompanied asylum seeking children come at age 16, 17. They are only looked after for the year and a bit. They then become care leavers and they're entitled to the whole equal support. So if I look at some of our neighbouring authorities, the number of care leavers who were formerly unaccompanied asylum seeking children is much, much smaller than ours. So we have 50% of our care leavers were formerly unaccompanied asylum seeking children who are yet waiting for leave to remain, for their applications to be processed, and that restricts their access to what happens next post 18 and 21 if they don't get their applications processed by the Home Office in a speedy manner. And we have a duty, because they are formerly looked after, to support them in certain aspects up to age 21 and to age 25.
Sorry, what's the age group? From what age to what age group for the children?
So looked after children is from birth to 18. 18 plus is a care leaver, and duties, our responsibilities vary from 18 to 21, 21 to 25. So 18 to 21, the biggest change is that we must accommodate a care leaver. We cannot have an 18 to 21-year-old not in accommodation. Post 21, that duty falls down, so we do not have to accommodate a care leaver post 21. So if they have no accommodation, even though we're formerly looked after at age 22, we have no duty. We have a number that we elect to choose to continue to accommodate for a short period of time after age 21 because of their circumstances. But there's no legal duty post 21.
Councillor May.
Yeah, and just on the numbers, how does that accommodation change? Is it supposedly if it's below, let's say the age, if it's 16, 17 years of age group, how does the type of accommodation vary from supposedly if your care leavers are exceeded that age, let's say between 20, 25? Do you have a particular kind of, are these like temporary kind of accommodation? Are these like hostels or like YMCAs, or how do they vary, and how does that work in terms of the council's kind of housing availability?
Okay. So any child looked after by the authority under the age of 16 must either be accommodated in a family-based setting, fostering, or in a registered children's home. You might have seen in the press over the last 2 or 3 years that local authorities were being challenged by government and Ofsted for placing children, i.e. under 16, in unregulated care homes. We have never and do not do that in Hounslow. Post 16, 16 to 18, you can, because you have deemed to be have agency, self-determination, you can be placed in supported accommodation between the ages of 16 and 18. If you're 18 plus, if you are in fostering as a formerly looked after child, you can take the option of what's called staying put, and you can stay in the foster family for up to 18 months. At that point, you have to move on because fostering is only registered provision of childcare and not adult care. 18 to 21, we will accommodate those that we need to accommodate in supported accommodation. So it's 2-3 households, shared accommodation. But the ultimate is to move every care leaver into their own tenancy before they get to 21, and certainly before they get to 22, 23.
What do you mean by their own tenancy? What does it look like? What are we talking about?
Social housing, a flat, fundamentally.
Just to add, that is obviously a big challenge for us in terms of finding supported accommodation, and that's where the cost comes in that we mentioned earlier as well.
Just to really follow up on that, Stephen, do we sort of look to our partners across borough for accommodation?
So it's any social situations, any social housing. So it could be the local authority, it could be a registered social landlord. And in some cases, we will actually support particular individuals in private rented with the right level of support, but that's very rarely, very rarely.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, is there sort of any other sort of questions here? Anything else you want to pick the brains of Councillor Lily Bath or indeed Stephen there? No? Okay, brilliant. Look, so it's just been noted, of course, absolutely fantastic amount of work has been gone on there in this sort of particular field for the last year and a half now. So I commend you, Stephen, and your team, and of course, Councillor Lily Bath as well. So thank you so much for all the work that you've done. But yeah, so just moving on to the next item. Well, thank you all. Okay, so this is agenda item number. Oh, okay, leader's going. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you can if you want. It's entirely up to you. You're more than welcome to say, of course you can. Okay. So agenda item number 9, this is update from scrutiny panels and Northwest London Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. OSC will know we have 3 scrutiny panels working across the municipal year. Each panel has now concluded formal work. So I'd like to ask each panel chair to provide an update on their activities across the municipal year. I would imagine OSC will be particularly interested in their recommendations. So we will, of course, then ask the committee to endorse the panel's work. Councillor Sidhu, can you please provide an update on the work of Children's and Young People's Scrutiny Panel, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The Children and Young People Scrutiny Panel have concluded a deep dive in school readiness. I presented recommendations to the Executive Director and lead member last week. School readiness, which refers to children development from 0 to 5, prepares them to thrive in a formal school environment and feeds into longer term life outcomes too. The panel research focused on key points. What school readiness looks like in Hounslow for different wards and years. What barriers and development are encouraged in Hounslow. The current support offered and achieved good development. As a panel, we identified many inputs of children developing in these early years, which lead the panel to hear from a wide variety of stakeholders over the course of the process. This includes senior officers, head teachers, organisations, NHS colleagues, in addition of 4 panel meetings. The CYP panel welcomed opportunities to conduct site visits to Beavers Children's Centres, where we were able to see a stay and play session and talk to parents about their experience with raising the children and gaining insights of the facilities. With family hub programs being key into input into supporting children readiness under the development of school education, national pilot programs. The panel heard from officers around the provisions currently run alongside family hubs. This gave information on the current and future programs available to families while offering a vehicle from which to deliver panel recommendations.
Yeah, whatever your update is. That's the recommendation. Yeah.
Okay. Our recommendations are easy, digestible, small summary sheets or leaflets. More information sent to councillors around the current service support for school readiness, so councillors can signpost families while engaging with the community. NHS provisions NHS provisions is important to include. More showcasing and exposure of partners that direct support school readiness, for example, Home Start and Reach Foundation, as a wider range of community events such as Area Forum Marketplace. Advocates a wider implement of standardized school readiness checklists with goals, milestones to be met before the school starting school to raise awareness of expectations of development at this age, etc. Toilet training, washing hands, tying shoes. Checklists to be distributed before nursery and reception starts. Restart summer programs for school readiness through family hubs, children's centres. Engaging a cross-borough network to encourage cross-learning between councils across London, especially those with similar demographics. This is a benchmark and observed of other boroughs are dealing with the same programs. These are our recommendations. The panel hopes to empathise and increase working conducted in the borough and expand upon efforts and supports of children achieving the best outcome in school and later in life.
Thank you so much for that, Chair. So, a brilliant piece of work there, I think. So well done to you and your panel there. Yeah, Councillor.
Yeah, can I ask if, or was there any identification of any of the children, young children, or what sort of numbers where their first language is not English, and whether or not that proved to give more difficult situations?
I don't think it was, Richard, but I will double check it. Oh, sorry.
So there is a slight correlation between English as a second language in the household and children not being ready for school. But ready for school is not about language and learning, it's about expression. But the correlation is if you are in a society where you speak another language, you're not in essence accessing all those things out there. So television, news, radio, books, whatever. So what we find frequently is that children who come from parents who do not speak English as a first language inherently are a few percentage points behind children whose parents do speak English as a first language.
Very quickly, Councillor Joss. Yeah.
And to that point, I think it's more related to socioeconomic background of the family rather than language spoken at home, because it's to do with the acquisition. And actually, children who are brought up in bilingual households actually have general better attainment rates later in life, better employment stats, and all the rest of it. So while there may be a suspected gap at that age, I believe I see you nodding, so it's not really a question, but yeah. Yeah. I did quickly have a question about some of the stats that we had. So we saw that in the graph looking at socioeconomic background, I was wondering on this sorry, page 153, and percentage of students achieving a good level of development. I was just wondering, is this a good enough factor for looking at how we analyse, given Chiswick Homefields to me seems like an outlier because household income seems to be dramatically, well, it's highest in the borough, but actually the percentage of percentage of students achieving a good level of development is actually quite low. And is that because it's done on an average across the ward, so it doesn't necessarily indicate socioeconomic disparities within that ward? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, so we now move on to Councillor Sharma. Is both the chair of Council's Health and Adult Care Scrutiny Panel and a council representative for North West London Joint Health and Ovarian Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Sharma, can you initially provide an update on work on the Health and Adult Care Scrutiny Panel? I'll come back to you for an update on the work of Josh once we have covered all three scrutiny panels.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This year, the Health and Adult Care Scrutiny Panel have now concluded our deep dive into employment support for SEND adults across Hounslow. The recommendations will be delivered to Executive Director Stephen Forbes and Lead Member Councillor Bath and Chowdhury, respectively, very soon, and the time of the and date of the meeting will be confirmed. This year, the Health and Adult Care Panel's deep dive focused on what support exists to send adults into gainful employment. And the scope of work. Meant that we were not only looking at what the council provided, but also other organisations across Hounslow as a whole. The panel considered the support available as well as how accessible it was. The focus was decided in the previous municipal year, and there are several reasons for this, selecting this topic. Hounslow has traditionally had a high rate of employment, but this has dropped during the peak of the COVID pandemic, but it has not recovered. As a panel, we identified many different methods of supporting send individuals into employment. And over the course of the year, there were several different stakeholders who presented on their areas of expertise. This included senior officers, leaders of VCSE organisations and local business leaders. In addition to the 4 panel meetings conducted, the Health and Adult Care Panel visited our barn and observed some work of their work at the Museum of Water and Steam in Brentford, and members of the panel observed some ICT work and spent some time with key stakeholders. We identified a key aspect which was foundational to most of our recommendations, that there was a lot of support for younger people from 0 to 25, but little for those over the age of 25. There was also a broad range of factors involved, with key partners from the voluntary sector being key in providing support. There were also limitations relating to the number of skilled job coaches and how this affected the ability of schemes to be implemented, such as Project Search. The panel's final recommendations will be presented, like I said, to the Executive Director and lead members very shortly, and I can then report back to you and the panel committee. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Sharma. And now we just move on to Councillor Mayor on his work, please, on the Housing and Environment Scrutiny Panel there, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the panel has concluded its investigation over the course of last 3 or 4 meetings that we've had on biodiversity and flood resilience, through the final meeting which concluded on the 11th of March 2024. Prior to this, the panel met 3 or 4 times, and starting from 4th July, 21st November last year, and then 31st January this year, and then very recently, I believe in March. Firstly, I'd like to give a thanks to all those who contributed to the panel, especially our councillors, Councillor Sharma, Councillor Emsley, Councillor Foot, Councillor Butt, Councillor Osim, and Councillor Nagra, and our committee from the Wild Chiswick, Joe Gilbert. So over the past year, the panel focused on 3 areas of investigation. First one being the operating context and the process by which the council endorses and enforces 10% biodiversity net gain. Secondly, the council's borough-wide policies and practices on biodiversity, flood resilience, and lastly, how the council and its partners, residents, and the relevant partners might work together to protect and enhance biodiversity in the borough. So throughout the process, the panel heard a variety of views, from planning to parks to floods, consultants, biodiversity experts, community groups, and more. In March, the panel agreed on 7 particular recommendations. The recommendations are as follows. So LBH should include the urban greening factor in the local plan to address gaps in biodiversity net gain. LBH should use our local plan to ensure developments within critical drainage areas provide increased storage through sustainable urban drainage systems, also known as SUDS. LBH and Green Space 360 should conduct an annual tree audit for the 20,000 pledged trees to confirm survival rates for the previously planted trees and pinpoint areas in the borough which would benefit from increased tree planting. Followed by LBH and Green Space 360 should increase environmental stewardship in areas with priority habitats, flood resilience potential, but limited voluntary presence, by helping to form community groups or allocating extra resources. Also, LBH and relevant partners should launch a borough-wide Hounslow Wildlife Network to connect individuals, community groups, and schools around nature. Followed by LBH should integrate community participation and consider social value with commissioning sites of importance for nature conservation, also known as SINCs, surveys through citizen site initiatives. And finally, LBH should provide fiscal or in-kind support for communities seeking to implement sustainable urban drainage systems, or SUDS, to depave areas, encouraging tree-level participation through initiatives like Neighbourhood Garden Awards. Thanks, Chair.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Very quickly, Councillor Giles.
I sit on the board of the Thames Landscape Strategy. We look at lots of different things. I'm taking over chairmanship so I'm just declaring my interest. I'm taking over chairmanship in June. We are also working on the joint Thames Strategy review, which is all about flooding and maintaining our good social environment. Can I ask, why is none of that included in this? We as a borough are a partner, and it's great to see what's going on, but we have a resource that we're already part of that I'm slightly offended, but there's a lot of stuff going on here, but it should be a key part of this piece. So while I welcome so many of these points, I feel like you've missed a major piece because we haven't shared that information within the council on a brighter scheme. And then also we welcome the audit on trees, because I understand that 50% of those pledged trees are due to die, which is a shame. So that's something that I'm really grateful for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So just on your first point first, so on the floods, so we did look through quite thoroughly, in fact, through the year or through the course of the year, in fact. So one of the systems that I talked about earlier, which is sustainable drainage systems, that's one. It's not the same, but it's one of the systems that we thought is more practical and feasible in terms of particularly where some of the other boroughs, for example, Sutton, if you look through the report, where they are, let's say, quite ahead of us in terms of flooding, drainage systems, and biodiversity net gain. So looking at them, it was more clear that some of these were easier to achieve through the SUDS as opposed to some of the other recommended schemes, which you're also referring to. In addition to that, and again, some of these, we are limited to about 6 or 7 recommendations. I mean, we can recommend as many as we want, but it's more feasible to have a number of recommendations which could be practically achieved. Now, just on your second point on the trees, so one of the recommendations that we do have refers to the LBH and Green Space 360 should conduct an annual tree and audit for the 20,000 pledged trees to confirm survival rates. So particularly, so there is that particular recommendation, which kind of refers to pretty much 20,000 trees as opposed to the 50% that you mentioned.
Okay, thank you. So I'm sure some of those points can be raised, Councillor Giles. You're more than happy to sort of raise it with particular cabinet members on those parts. You've even got the leader as well. So
I was going to say, Catherine has now started coming to those meetings since since she initially came here. So yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so firstly, thank you all for great work over the year, and please do pass my thanks on to all your panel members, with all those sort of panel chairs and your panel members. Thank you. The role of scrutiny panels can play a huge part, especially in the depth and of the issue and the policy development. So I can hopefully we can see more of this going on next municipal year as well. For now, I'd like to formally note my thanks and endorse the panel's work and recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. So, Councillor Sharma, can you now please update us on Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee, please?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm the representative for Hounslow and the Overview and Scrutiny on the Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And the committee, which includes representatives from 8 North West London boroughs, meet 4 times this year. In July 23, the committee looked at the North West London strategy for acute beds, and we reviewed the progress of standardising ophthalmology services, which covers the closure of operos in Ealing and Hounslow. September brought a review of a proposal for consultation on palliative care, and we discussed the North West London mental health and estate strategies along with methods to maximise the use of acute beds, considering the closure of an inpatient mental health service at Gordon Hospital. In December, Hounslow had the privilege of hosting JOSC here in Hounslow House, and we considered the North West London workforce strategy and questioned ambulance service performance, which has seen delayed response times for Category 2 calls. It was noted that Hounslow had remained particularly resilient thanks to the training at Brentford's Paramedic Centre and the success of the virtual wards at West Middlesex Hospital. The committee also received an update on the new orthopaedic centre in central Middlesex, which is now operational. And in response to our feedback, the ICS has implemented a ring-fence transport facility using ambulances to provide free travel for those facing complex or costly journeys to the centre. And I can actually report back today that it had its official opening today. I was invited, but obviously I did scrutiny in the day today. And during the final March meeting, the committee questioned the proposed rollout of same-day access hubs. It was proposed that the patients seeking same-day appointments for non-complex issues would be assessed at these hubs rather than their regular GP practices. However, concerns were raised by GPs, patient groups and counsellors about the potential disruptions to continuity of care, increased workloads and patient safety risks with this new model. And in light of this, the ICB has temporarily shelved plans for the April the 1st rollout. And will work with the committee over the course of the next year to ensure the model is well understood and safe for patients. Committee also looked at obesity weight management services, considering North West London has the highest childhood obesity rates in London. And the committee reviewed the ICB's plans to invest 107.2 million in dental activity across 315 practices. And lastly, the panel considered the recently introduced Pharmacy First initiative, which allows pharmacists to prescribe antibiotics for certain conditions. As this was our last meeting of the year, I'm gathering potential topics for next year's agenda and would welcome any suggestions from members.
Can I ask if we had the correct link to that paper in our documents?
Well, this one.
Yeah, because there's a link here that says update. It says update from the Northwest Joint Health Overview, but then when we open the link, it goes to the deep dive reports.
I can send it.
It's on the agenda. It says.
Okay, so the JOS was just a verbal update, not an actual report.
Because on the agenda it says page 140, but yeah, it's been misreferenced.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you again so much for that, Councillor Sharma. Okay, so we sort of move on to agenda item number 10. This is the annual scrutiny report to Borough Council. In July, Borough Council received the Overview and Scrutiny Committee's annual report. This report sets out the work we have undertaken this municipal year. Officers have circulated a draft of this paper, and we now have the opportunity to comment on that draft. Of course, there are gaps, our work over the year, the last 12 hours, but do members have any suggestions or observations on the draft as it stands? We will use this feedback from tonight to finalise the report before the end of the municipal year. Of course, you'll receive it by the end of the week. Councillor Farr.
Thank you, Chair. It's not a question, just a comment. Yeah, I'm happy with the recommendation and the draft. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, there's still bits to be added on. So obviously from today, this morning, and what we're going to be doing tonight as well. So there will be bits added on. But thank you for those comments. Yeah, that's great.
That mean that we will get an update, a fully updated report that we can look at, and then if we've got any problems, we can send them straight to you.
You can indeed. You can send it straight to me. But yes, you will get an updated report, of course.
I was going to ask, will we be able to submit some stuff via email?
Yes, of
Or not?
course.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. If there's nothing else, I'll move on then swiftly to our next agenda item. This is the work program. So this is suggestions for next municipal year 24-25. So Scrutiny develops a work program at the beginning of every sort of municipal year. It is good practice to keep the document under review. It is a live document after all. As the year ends, we now have the opportunity to suggest topics that we think the new OSC might want to consider as part of our own of its own work program. May I suggest in that light of any new figures on climate or becoming available this summer, or OSC considering looking at issues, is one of early meetings to ensure we understand our data? And anything that anybody wants us to or the committee next year want to look at? Yeah.
I think that, what we're experiencing is that the climate is moving in a way where we're likely to get more problems with flooding and those sort of things. Now, we've already had experiences in the past year of certain flooding, but that's likely to be worse. So I think it's something that we should be at least having in our back pocket, if you like.
So yeah, I mean, we can certainly add that to the work program. Of course, the housing panel's already kind of done that, but if you want us to look at it broadly on other sort of areas, of course we can do that. Yeah. Councillor Sharma.
Thank you, Chair. It would be good to, because we're rolling out a lot more active travel, and so it would be good to be able to have an update on that, and to be able to delve a bit more into if there's more members of our community that are actively choosing different modes of transport. Now that we've had the rollout of the Lime bikes, and we also are doing Doctor Bike, and we've got accessible bikes in the parks, and the EV rollout and everything. So that'd be good.
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, we can certainly add that in.
And just to build on what Councillor Foote said, and given our experience of scrutiny in a day-to-day, perhaps we could put flooding and flood risk management into one of those scrutiny a day opportunities next year, so that we're all aware of it, because this is something that really does underpin a huge amount of what we're working towards, especially with our net zero objectives.
Yep, good. Thank you. Councillor, the leader is there. There we go. Yes, leader.
Thank you, Chair. Just on that point, it's an interesting point that Councillor Foote and Councillor Giles make in terms of resilience, especially in a changing climate. And of course, there's a council response, which absolutely you must have regard to, but actually the suggestion of scrutiny in a day is a good one, because it brings in partners, and most partners that have a stake in the environment in the private sector also have ESG strategies. So being able to scrutinise those alongside in the partnerships that they bring into the council, I think would be very beneficial for us as a cabinet as well. So perhaps something to consider as part of a broader piece of work, rather than just obviously, please do scrutinise the council's work on it, but there is a partnership piece to all of this as well.
No, that's very good. Thank you so much for that input. Any other suggestions?
Can we look at community safety as well, please?
Community safety? Yeah. Thank you. So these are going to be, of course, additions to what also the council may want, or indeed leader might, or cabinet might, or somebody might say, can we take this piece to OSC? But of course, yeah. Councillor Tuck.
Thank you, Chair. I know Councillor Sharma has already mentioned about active travel, but it'll be a good idea to review the cycle infrastructure specifically in the western part of the borough.
Okay, yeah. So this is more this what part of the borough?
West
west
part
side,
of
the
it,
west side, okay.
especially e-bikes.
Right, there we go. We can certainly do that. Sorry, Councillor Rajwat.
Yeah, no, just on Councillor Malik's question, it'd be good to know what about community safety you want to scrutinise in terms of the discussion that you've had here this evening, because that seemed to go quite a way. It'd just be good to understand, just so I can prep.
Yeah, sure, no
Councillor
problem.
Owen
Do you want to elaborate on that? Yeah.
We already got on number 5, which we had this year, anti-social behavior, domestic violence, and remember attacks. That's all.
All right, thank you. Okay, so any other suggestions for the work program for next municipal
Sorry,
year?
apologies, Chair, and
Sure.
obviously because I'm new to this panel.
No, go for it.
Is like with this format, should we already have come with you ideas, or should we have come? Yeah, or it's a working document. Do we have a link to that working document that we can
just-
make suggestions, or we
Just email me.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, that's
Because I
fine.
was just curious whether I should have received something and I hadn't. I was looking for it. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's open forum. So just even if you can't suggest anything tonight, you're more than welcome to sort of just email me. That's not a problem at all. Okay, so yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I was going to suggest, not to the panel, because obviously it's not for me to suggest, but I was going to suggest that Stephen and I are happy to take suggestions from you of what, or we're happy to, no, what I'm trying to say is that you and I are happy to sit down and offer some suggestions. Of course, you don't have to take them as a panel, but just some things that might be helpful from our perspective. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Thank you kindly, Councillor Barnes. Okay, so we move on to agenda item number 12, which is any urgent business. There's nothing for me. Is there any for committee members? Thank you. And then we move on to agenda item number 13, which is the date of the next meeting, which is the 11th of June 2024. And with that, this meeting of the Council's Overview and Scrutiny Committee draws to a close. Thank you all for your contributions tonight and throughout this municipal year. The committee will next meet with new membership of the new council year on 11th of June 2024. Councillor Sharma.
I'd just like to say thank you to Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. You're all too kind, but thank you so much. I'll draw this to a close.